All right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Powers. I've got a pretty interesting story for you guys today. So this story is going to be about yet another male to female transgender powerlifter that has actually broken some world records. So this powerlifter, Mary Gregory, put up a post on Instagram that she won 9 out of 9 events, meaning she got 3 white lights on all 3 lifts, setting a new Masters world record squat, a open bench press world record, and a Masters world deadlift record. And this was in the 100% raw powerlifting federation. So in contrast to the last story that we talked about that was along these same lines, the JC Cooper story, who was a much younger, more recent transition. So I think these two stories go along together rather nicely, because the first story was interesting because that powerlifter was banned from competing because they thought she would have an unfair advantage against the other girls in that division because of the fact that she was transitioning from a male. But in that first story, she didn't break any world records or do anything crazy in competing because she was just banned from competing. So in this story, world records are actually broken. So this story is kind of a case in point of what might happen when a transgender lifter does transition from male to female and compete with other females. So, of course, this story is something that can easily be politicized. So as a result, it's been something that's been shared across a lot of mainstream news platforms, and it's really been making the rounds. And actually, a top men's open pro bodybuilder sent me this story to make a video on. So I wanted to thank him, but I'm not going to say his name in this video because I don't know if he wants to be associated with it. But he is the one that actually brought my attention to this story. So there's a couple interesting elements to this story that aren't listed in this article. So the first thing is, if you go to this person's Instagram, they actually have their numbers pre and post hormone replacement therapy in their bio. So they show that the numbers dropped post transition. So a 408 pound squat dropping to 314, a 298 pound bench press dropping to 233, and a 507-pound deadlift dropping to 424. So I thought that was a little interesting bit of perspective that we haven't really seen with some of these other stories, actually giving a comparison of pre and post HRT of what the numbers were looking like. So I thought that was interesting. And then, like I mentioned earlier, this is different from the JC Cooper story because JC Cooper was someone, I think she was in her late teens or early 20s that had transitioned. This is someone that's competing in Masters divisions, meaning she's at least 35 or up. So I'm not entirely sure when they transitioned, but this is someone who likely spent a lot more time as a male prior to transitioning to female than JC Cooper. Now, the other thing that I found interesting here is a lot of these articles that were published about this situation, most of those articles included citations from Olympic competitors, Olympians, giving their opinion on the unfairness of this person competing against other females. Now, I thought that was interesting because it's kind of a deceptive tactic, because the way they word these articles, many of them are titled transgender weightlifter and not transgender powerlifter, which is something worth mentioning because the fact that they're citing the opinions of Olympic competitors and the fact that they're calling it weightlifting is kind of deceptive, because powerlifting is not an Olympic sport and weightlifting is. So I think they're kind of trying to make this seem like a larger issue and something that it's not by calling it weightlifting and then citing the opinions of Olympic competitors, because that's not really relevant. Powerlifting is not in the Olympics. So I don't really see any reason to specifically cite the opinions of Olympic competitors. Now, where things get even more interesting is if you look at some of the reasoning why JC Cooper wasn't allowed to compete in the USAPL. One of the reasons was the hormone manipulation used in the transition process. Because the USAPL was a drug-tested organization, they had some pretty solid ground to stand on with that argument. Now, it gets interesting because this federation that Mary Gregory competed in is also a drug-tested federation, but they seem to kind of look the other way about this issue. And then, of course, the other main argument for why the USAPL banned JC Cooper from competing is that they believe there is a undeniable biological advantage to transitioning from male to female over other females that were born female, which I 100% agree with, by the way. I think that if you have completed puberty as a male and then you transition to female, you have a biological advantage in a strength sport like powerlifting or weightlifting, where things like speed and strength and the structure of your body and leverage and bone density and muscle mass and things like that all come into play when you're lifting heavy weights. I think that's an undeniable advantage over females that were born female. So there's a conflict. There's transgender weightlifters that want to compete. There's transgender powerlifters that want to compete, but it's hard for them to kind of decide what division they're going to compete in. And I think I speak for the majority of people when I say this. I think the majority of people, regardless of what their political affiliation is or what their political opinion is, I think the majority of people would agree that someone that's born a male transitioning to a female has an advantage over females born females in weightlifting. I think most people would agree on that. And I think most people would agree there's some unfairness involved in someone competing against born females. So how do we solve the situation? These people want to compete. I think they should be able to compete. There's a lot of people that feel they shouldn't be able to compete in certain divisions. I think the solution is make a separate division for these people who want to compete against each other, but not against someone that was born a female. And again, I don't think this is an opinion that's meant to be discriminatory against these people. I think it's an opinion that's trying to be inclusive and give a degree of fairness to the other competitors. I think that's what it's all about. Again, it's not about exclusion. It's not about discrimination. I think it's about trying to make these competitions fair. And sometimes a competition can't be inclusive of everybody and still be fair at the same time. That's just the fact of the matter. And I think at the end of the day, you have to look at it from a competitor's perspective. Would you rather compete in an all-inclusive federation, or would you rather compete in a fair federation? So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to this channel if you have not already. Thank you guys for watching the video. Nick Strength and Power, signing out.